My parents sent my husband a watch for his birthday. I looked at it and said, "Don't touch it." By the next morning, that box was evidence. This is not a story about cute family dinners and sentimental gifts. It's about the moment when you realize that someone has decided that your principles can be bought. And at a fixed price. Ben and I are sitting in the kitchen after dinner. The house was quiet, with only the dishwasher mumbling its own words and the old blues playing from the speaker. We were sorting through boxes of groceries for tomorrow's distribution. Beans, baby food, powdered milk. A normal evening in our lives, until someone rang the doorbell. The call was short and double. There was a box on the mat. An ordinary cardboard box with a handwritten label, "Happy Birthday, Ben," from Evelyn and Ray. I picked it up, and everything inside pulled downward like an elevator with no buttons. Ben was already reaching for the knife to open it, but I held up my palm. "Stop. Photo first." He sighed, and I'd already pulled out my phone, removed the packaging, the barcode, recorded a short video. I record everything when I sense a catch. Inside was a soft leather case. I opened it, and there was a steel watch, heavy with "Always with Love" engraved on the lid. I flipped over the price tag. $3,800. Ben exhaled a low whistle. "Generous," he said. "But what are those for?" "Put them back," I replied. "And don't wear them." "Why not?" "Because it's not a gift. It's a trap. I've seen these gestures before. Gifts that turn into debt. In our family it was called support, but in reality it always came with a price. Since I was a kid, I was the one who fixed everything that broke. Paying bills, solving problems, meeting challenges face to face. Jake, my younger brother, has lived his whole life in a different reality where the word responsibility sounds like a joke from a foreign language. My parents called it keeping him safe from stress, and I called it all on me. When I got married, I still put them into the foundation where Ben and I work. It seemed like you couldn't find anyone more reliable than your own. 3 months ago, Ray walked into the office with a folder. New caterer, better prices, freshness guaranteed, paperwork straight. We signed a contract, winter heavy workload, no time to dig around. At first everything went smoothly. Then the complaints started coming in. Rotten vegetables, strange flavors in canned goods, expired food on the shelf. Ben insisted on an audit. The result? Boxes labeled premium were filled with cheap produce, dates were off, and the prices on the invoices were almost double. I called my parents in to talk to them. They held their defenses like old masters of diplomacy. "You don't understand how the market works. That's how everyone works now. You have to trust your own." There was tension in their voices, as if they were covering not a mistake but a benefit. Back to the clock. A receipt from a boutique downtown. The buyer's name is the same contact as Northway Provisions. The puzzle clicked. I looked at Ben. It was a bribe. He nodded. "Then let's act on it." I tucked the case into a clear Ziploc bag and signed with a marker. Date, time, place. I entered the serial number into the spreadsheet, took a screenshot. I called the boutique using the number on the receipt and calmly clarified. The purchase was today with a company card. The manager's name matches the contact on our invoices. At the other end, someone coughed and asked me to call back. In a minute. A minute was enough time for me to print out a copy of the receipt on the printer against the wall. Ben put the kettle on and sat down opposite. "Do you think it's directly related to the contract?" "I don't. I know it is." "A plan?" "We document everything. And we follow the rules. Not what's easy. What's right." We spoke quietly like the walls could record. I have a long past practicing calm. At 10, I stood in line at the drugstore with a prescription and change in the palm of my hand while Jake played video games. At 17, I carried a second set of keys to my parents' house because it's more secure on you. When I set them up with a foundation, it seemed like the right move, experience, trust, a common goal. Ray at the foundation quickly cleaned up procurement. Spreadsheets, calls, discounts, the confident, I know best tone. Evelyn charmed donors, cards, birthday calls, cookies in boxes. Everything looked decent. And then the little things started happening. The missing invoice, the overly smooth explanations, the late night calls with "everything's under control here, don't worry." We started the audit quietly. Ben went to the warehouse with Louis, the storekeeper. I joined them as they were opening pallets. Underneath the top layer of beautiful boxes were other, simpler ones. The dates didn't match the invoices. We found 2 dented cans and picked up the receiving logs. Who signed? I asked. Ray brought the paperwork himself. He said it was all agreed upon, Luis answered. We checked the lot numbers and weighed the weights. In the table, payment for organic, actually delivered economy. The coordinator asked, odor complaints. What should we do? I replied. Stop the distribution of this batch and notify everyone. In the morning we arrived at the office before anyone else. On my desk were 2 envelopes, notices of termination. In the meeting room, Evelyn and Ray sat side by side like a family photo. Are you serious? He began. Because of a couple of odors? Because of documents and facts, I said. And because of the people who eat what we give away. You're over-dramatizing it, Evelyn said. It's a business. It's a charity, Ben replied. And we have different math. I laid out the photos, the log printouts, a copy of the watch receipt. Evelyn's fingers trembled. Ray said, birthday present. What's the big deal? That it's not a present. It's a trap. And you brought it into our house. They exchanged a quick glance, and I saw a familiar family in an alien role, defending themselves not against a mistake, but against exposure. We're freezing the contract with Northway, I said. You will not have access to procurement. The notices are on the table. You can't do that to your parents, Evelyn said like a sentence. Yes, I can. Because you didn't just set us up. You poison people. They're gone. An email from an unfamiliar address flashed on my phone. Adult talk. I put its screen down. That was enough for today. The watch lay in the bag, heavy as a rock at the bottom of a sink, and I swear I thought it ticked, even without a battery. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it unfolded. I don't like scenes at the door, but Jake came in just like that. Without a bell, with the smile of a man who's sure the whole neighborhood owes him. He leaned against the railing and said, Well, are you pleased with yourself? You blew the deal. What a surprise, I replied. I thought you'd come to return the books you borrowed 3 years ago. He grinned, played with the keys. People aren't happy. Very unhappy. People who? People who've already invested. Promises have been made. He took a step closer. Ben stood beside him, arms crossed. Tell her. Jake tossed in Ben's direction. Family first. Family isn't a cover, Ben said. I nodded and closed the door right in front of Jake's nose. First came the anonymous investigation. A photo of our warehouses, a look at the premium prices comment, and a shot of the very clock in our kitchen. The text was written by a man who loves dots. Questions sprinkled into the foundation's private message. 2 donors asked for a pause for 3 weeks. For me, these are not just numbers. The team came together on its own. Someone brought coffee. Someone brought printouts of the posts. I said, we work with facts. Emotions are at home in the kitchen. Only documents and verified information go online. No responses in the comments. The lawyer sat next to me and started a plan. Screenshots, links, date, time, fixing via tagged mail. The IT guy put up a graph. Comments peaks in the evening. Pages are new. Registered on the same day. Posting the same wording. Robots without imagination. By lunchtime, my personal cell phone received a message from an unfamiliar number. You can still be stopped. But you need to negotiate. I took a screenshot and put it in my logs_social media folder. When there's yelling all around, silence is a tool. In the evening, the courier brought an envelope. Heavy paper, smooth alien font. Reinstate the contract with Northway. Put Evelyn and Ray back where they belong. Remove the accusatory posts. Otherwise, the attacks will continue. The consequences for the foundation could be irreversible. Below is a photo of the clock close-up. At least they stopped playing family diplomacy, Ben said. Let's chalk that up to transparency of intent, I replied, and put the letter in the blackmail file. I shelved everything. Folders called Contract_Northway, Finance_Correspondence, Social Media Logs, and Photo_Hours. Each file has a date, time, comment. I checked the names of the pictures. It's a way to keep other people's chaos out. In a separate document, a chronology of events. Complaints, audit, conversation with parents, contract freeze, Jake's visit, online attack, letter. I made tea and watched the reflection of the lamp shiver on the surface of the water. Simple, we either give in or we do what we have to do. In the morning, the office greeted us with the smell of paper. The lawyer was already sitting in the conference room with a flash drive, a checklist and printouts. "Let's go down the list," he said. A photo of the unpacking, a receipt from the boutique, matching the manager's name to the Northway contact, audit reports, customer complaints, metrics on online activity, a letter, and signatures, I added. On every page. We signed. I restricted access to purchases, changed passwords, closed the ability to edit old invoices. The IT guy collected the logs. Luis from the warehouse brought a list of shipments that needed to be removed before they could be rechecked. The volunteers were given instructions what could be issued, what could be put on hold. We had no margin for error. By noon, social media got more interesting. Anonymous began quoting internal phrases, scraps of letters, unfinished sentences. Someone leaked bits of correspondence like a child who'd learned the password and found the task list. I recognized Evelyn's turns of phrase. Polite, warm, with a touch of "we're family." We added it to the file. Close to 3, another message arrived. Rewind. No one will get hurt. I responded with silence and a new screenshot. In the afternoon we had a team briefing. I said, "We don't have the right to abandon people for someone else's gifts. If it's scary, that's fine. But the work continues. Reports every hour. Anything strange, we'll record it." One of the coordinators asked, "How long is this going to take?" "As long as it takes," I answered. I saw the fatigue and called it out loud. Toward evening, I walked into the warehouse. The refrigerators were humming. On the table were batches with red "Hold" stickers on them. I lifted the lid of the box. The tomatoes looked decent but smelled suspicious. I wrote down the lot number. "Nora, if I have to, I'll stay the night," Louis said. "Don't be a hero," I said. "Pay attention." He nodded. As I walked back to my office, I heard voices in the hallway. Evelyn was speaking softly on the phone, but the words were barbed. "She's overreacting. She needs to be reminded who raised her." Ray was answering someone about a temporary crisis, and will resolve sooner than it seems. I walked past and documented. In my office, I opened my blackmail folder and added a note. Parent calls, tone of pressure, vocabulary is familial, meaning is coercive. The next wave came in the form of a letter of concern. Same font, same paper. "We want to help you avoid mistakes. Put things back the way they were. You'll get tired of fighting. Think of your reputation." I put the letter next to the first one. "Where do we stand?" Ben asked. "On documents," I answered. "And on the rule, not what's easy. What's right." By evening, it was clear that the next step was necessary. No hinting and no waiting. We assembled the folder, checked the chronology, added volunteer testimony, printed out the metadata of letters and photos. I put on my coat. Ben took the envelope and flash drive. We left the office without a phrase. The ventilation rustled in the hallway, and the noise was enough. The station's reception area smelled of coffee and paper. The man behind the counter looked up. "What can I do for you?" "We need to hand over the application and materials," I said. He nodded, slid the forms over. I signed my name. Ben put the envelope on the counter. The watch was in a clear bag. At that moment my insides went quiet. Not comfortable. Right. I exhaled and said to myself, "We've chosen a side. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay to see me put everyone in their place." 6 months later, I was sitting in the same meeting room, but there was no Evelyn, Ray, or Jake at the table. There was the smell of coffee and the noise of the air conditioner. Ben and I waited for a call from the lawyer. The phone buzzed at 10:03. "There's news," he said. The court had ruled. The words sounded almost mundane, but each hit the mark. Evelyn and Ray, 18 months. Jake, probation and 300 hours of community service. Northway Provision was losing its license. Provision tried to argue, but the judge had no patience for lies. Ben smiled without joy. "Well, that's it then." "No," I replied. "It's just a point in one sentence." The courtroom didn't see me often, but this time I came early to hear the wording with my own ears. The lawyers were whispering against the walls, the clerk was laying out papers, the judge was leafing through the case and making quick notes. I sat on the bench and repeated dry paragraphs in my head. Contract, forgery, duress. When the deadline sounded, I didn't experience victory. It wasn't about winning. It was about sanitizing the place where the mud had been brought. After the decision was announced, I answered questions briefly. Yes, the foundation continues to operate. Yes, we are ready to show the report. No, we do not comment on personal stories. A reporter tried to draw out the phrase, family always. I interrupted. Don't generalize. What's important here is specific. Documents and decisions. I may have spoiled his story. I was fine with that. We updated the transparency section of the website. We posted the audit, the chronology, the list of control measures. The IT specialist added a section with acceptance logs. No magic, just tables that save more than slogans. Donors responded quickly. Letters about resuming transfers, new volunteer applications, a few strict questions about procedures. Strict questions are answered not with emotion, but with policy lines. The foundation's kitchen is noisy again. Steam rises to the ceiling, knives beat out a rhythm. The hallway smells of pepper and clean rags. I stand at the sink and wash apples. An executive who thinks washed apples are also a strategy. Luis nods at the corner where the boxes are stacked with brightly colored past inspection stickers. That's the way we keep it, I reply. Toward evening, the East Neighborhood Coordinator calls. We need to add 20 kits. A family with 3 children has arrived. I look at the board, dragging out magnets with addresses. Ben offers his pickup. We load the maps, move the shipping times, and I catch myself thinking I love these tasks more than speeches. Loud words are worthless if someone didn't have enough milk at the end of the day. The first time I saw Jake in his utility vest, I was relieved. I said hello because otherwise I would have lied about myself. He nodded and went back to the bag. No pathos, no scenes. Dry leaves lay on the pavement and the wind turned them over like cheap excuses. I walked on. Sometimes the adult position is not to explain but to go on my shift. It was easier with the letters from Evelyn and Ray. There were none. Not a single line. And there was more honesty in that than in their earlier caring advice. Silence is better than exclamation point manipulation. I crossed out the waiting for an explanation clause and closed the notebook. A week later we did an internal review, what worked, what failed, where we would tighten controls. The lawyer said that quick documentation saved us months of nerves. IT suggested 2-step procurement reconciliation, an automatic notification of batch discrepancies. I added a simple thing. Weekly short rounds through the warehouse, where the manager goes with the storekeeper and looks at live boxes, not reports. Sometimes the eyes are the best control system. A motto appeared on a whiteboard in the office, a line from my letter to Ben. Not what's easy. What's right? Someone circled it with a marker. Someone added an arrow to the shipping plan next to it. It looked funny, but it worked. We didn't swear, we did item by item, signed and dated. The team started talking shorter and acting faster. The donors invited us to a meeting. A long table, carafes of water, folders at each. They listened to the numbers, asked questions, asked for examples. I told them how we unpacked the batches, how we stopped the giving, how we turned in the materials. One of them said, "You are too calm for such a storm." "A storm is when you don't have a map," I replied. We had a map. We just didn't pretend we knew the sea better than anyone else. In the evening, I took out the bag with the watch and put a little note next to it. Evidence. The watch didn't tick, but it was as if I could hear it inside. The same sound from the day of unpacking. The clock ticked, even without a battery. Not because it worked, but because it was a reminder. Any with love could turn out to be a sign that said, "Enter through checkout." I put the package in the foundation safe, next to the important papers. Let the symbol live where the facts are kept. People sometimes write to me, "Did you really choose principle over family?" I answer, "I chose the people we feed and my conscience. Family is not the password to the cash register." Yes, the decision has a price. I paid it and got change in the form of a restful night's sleep. No romance, just a balance that adds up. Before leaving the office, I walked through the kitchen. Ella the volunteer asked how I was holding up. Like everyone else. "Working," I said. She grinned and slid me a container of soup. "Take it home. Don't play the hero." It was the best advice I'd gotten in 6 months. I turned off the light and heard the refrigerator humming quietly. Life isn't a headline, it's a to-do list for tomorrow. So, Ben said, a new life? Not a new one. My own. Would you do the same? Sign up if you want to see us hold that bar every day.